So I want you to imagine staring at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Right, which is already a terrifying thought for a lot of
Oh,
people.
absolutely. But I don't mean peering through the reinforced quartz window of some deep sea submersible. I mean literally standing there in the dry, choking dust where millions of cubic miles of water used to be.
Just a completely barren wasteland.
Exactly. You're looking up at a sky that is just fundamentally wrong, and you're standing in this massive dry abyss. And today, we're going to be tracing the life of a boy who walks across that dry seabed. He starts as this persecuted outcast, and he ends up as a literal god who moves the planet Earth to the center of the galaxy.
It's really just a staggering escalation. We're looking at the notes and the analysis surrounding Stéphane Woll's 1957 French science fiction masterpiece, The Evolution of the Dark Child of New York. And, I mean, the sheer scope of this narrative is something that just forces you to entirely abandon your preconceived notions of how a story should scale.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, it starts in the dirt and it literally ends in the cosmos.
And that transition, that journey from the dirt to the cosmos, is really the why of our deep dive today, because we aren't just here to recount some bizarre vintage sci-fi plot,
Right.
right?
Oh, definitely not. There's so much more to it.
Right. The mission of this deep dive is to really unpack a story that operates as this deeply poignant, resonant fable. It uses these extreme, visceral, post-apocalyptic images to ask some really fundamental questions.
Yeah, questions that still hold up perfectly today.
Exactly. So we are going to explore things like the mechanics of learned cruelty, the stubborn resilience of innate compassion, and, the absolute double-edged sword of hazardous technology. And ultimately, it all ties into a concept that affects every single person listening to this right now.
Which is the universal human desire simply to belong.
Yes, exactly. To just be part of a group.
Right, because if you strip away all the mutant creatures and the ruined megacities and, the reality-bending physics, what remains is an intensely intimate psychological portrait.
It really is. It's shockingly intimate for such a huge story.
It's basically an exploration of isolation. It asks, what happens to the human psyche when it is pushed to the absolute fringes of existence?
Okay, so let's establish the geography of this isolation first, because this world building really requires a complete paradigm shift for the listener.
Oh, a massive shift. The world is unrecognizable.
Right. We are dropped into this radically altered Earth. But, the apocalypse here isn't just a nuclear wasteland or some zombie virus. The oceans are just gone.
Completely, entirely dried up.
Yeah, and I don't mean a severe drought. I mean the planetary water cycle as we know it has just ceased to exist in its current form.
The environmental devastation is absolute. And what's interesting is Wool doesn't spend pages and pages delivering some textbook explanation of the mechanics behind the evaporation.
He doesn't give you the science of where the water went.
Not really, no. The source material hints at it, but the focus is really on the terrifying, immediate reality of the aftermath. By removing the oceans, the author strips humanity of its primary engine for life, trade, and climate regulation.
Everything that makes the world work.
Exactly. Humanity is just reduced to its absolute lowest, most desperate state.
And just think about the physical reality of that for a second. Imagine standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, but instead of a river carving it, it's the entire Atlantic basin.
It's almost too big to picture.
It really is. You are
And it-
looking at a drained planet, and the story specifically places us in what used to be the Caribbean seabed.
Right down to the depths.
Yeah, it's now this vast, dry, unforgiving expanse of salt flats and abyssal plains. And former islands, places like Cuba and Haiti, they're no longer tropical paradises.
And the people living down on the seafloor, those islands are now towering, impossible mountain ranges just jutting out of a dusty abyss.
Which just forces a total recalibration of human geography.
It really does. The high ground, the places we currently inhabit right now, are just unreachable, forbidding peaks to these people. Humanity is literally scurrying around in the abyssal plains.
I mean, the atmospheric pressure alone down there would be drastically different, right?
Oh, absolutely. The air would be incredibly thick and heavy. And the humans that remain, well, they've regressed entirely. The whole concept of civilization is just gone.
They aren't building cities anymore.
No, not at all. They are no longer the masters of the planet. They are primitive, nomadic, hunter-gatherer tribes, and they're just barely surviving among the skeletal remains of coral reefs and old shipwrecks.
It's a society entirely defined by scarcity. And, into this brutal, regressed environment, we are introduced to our protagonist.
The Dark Child.
Right. He's known only as the Dark Child. And from the very first moment we meet him, his existence is defined by misery.
It's heartbreaking, really.
It is. He is mercilessly persecuted by his own small tribe. And the justification for this cruelty is just entirely arbitrary. It's based solely on his skin color.
Yeah, they label him a mutant.
Exactly. In a world where every single day is a battle against starvation, they treat him as a harbinger of bad luck. He's this convenient scapegoat for every terrible thing that happens to them in this wasteland.
From a sociological standpoint, the Dark Child perfectly embodies the archetypal outcast. But the mechanics of why he's the outcast are really fascinating.
How so?
Well, when a group of humans is pushed to the absolute brink of environmental collapse, the social dynamic shifts violently. Empathy requires a surplus of energy and security.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. You can't care about others if you're starving.
Exactly. When starvation is your daily reality, fear just takes over. The tribe needs an explanation for their suffering. They need something tangible they can point to and blame.
So they project their existential terror onto the one person who looks different.
Precisely. It's a classic, tragic human response to unmanageable stress.
I want you, the listener, to think about the last time you felt entirely alienated in a room full of people. Like maybe you walked into a party where you didn't know anyone, and you felt that acute, heavy sense of just not belonging.
It's an awful feeling.
It is. Now magnify that feeling by 1,000. That is the Dark Child sitting by the communal fire. He is physically proximate to his species, but psychologically he is entirely isolated.
And, his status as a rejected innocent is actually the necessary catalyst for the entire narrative.
Because he's an outsider.
Right, because he's not protected by the social contract of his tribe. He is not bound by its limitations either. He represents an innate, almost naive compassion, which stands in stark contrast to the learned institutional cruelty of his terrified society.
Which brings us to the inciting incident of the story. And honestly, it is a masterclass in psychological tension.
Oh, it's brutal.
It really is. So the tribe's shaman, who is essentially the spiritual and structural dictator of this small group, he sentences the Dark Child to execution.
But he doesn't just kill him on the spot.
No, that would be too simple. He attaches this deeply agonizing condition to the sentence. The execution is to be carried out upon the shaman's return from a pilgrimage to the mystical city of the gods.
This is a mechanism of pure psychological torture.
Yeah, it's sadistic.
The child is essentially told, your death is inevitable. We are just waiting for the clock to run out. It completely removes any hope of integration or redemption or escape within the framework of the tribe.
It's the ultimate suspension of agency. He's just sitting there waiting to be murdered by the very people he wants to love him.
It's a terrible limbo to be stuck in.
But then the ticking clock stops. Days pass, and the shaman fails to return from his pilgrimage.
Right, he just vanishes into the wasteland.
And the Dark Child realizes something profound. He has absolutely nothing left to lose, so he makes a monumentally defiant choice. He breaks a deeply ingrained sacred taboo, and he follows the forbidden route that the shaman took.
This pivot right here is crucial. The cruelty of his rejection is the exact mechanism that pushes him out of the known world.
It forces his hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The boundary of his known universe was defined by fear. But, once you realize your society actively wants you dead, the unknown stops being a place of terror and actually becomes your only logical sanctuary.
Oh, yeah. The wasteland is safer than his own home.
Right. To survive, to reclaim his agency, he must step into the unknown ruins of the old world.
And what he finds when he steps past that boundary is pretty jarring. He follows the path into the ancient ruins, and eventually he finds the frozen corpse of the shaman.
The man who sentenced him to death didn't make it.
Nope. And this is where the story takes a really sharp turn into primitive ritualism. The Dark Child follows a specific tribal custom. He consumes the shaman's brain, and he takes a vertebra from the shaman's spine to add to his own necklace.
It's a very striking visual.
By doing this symbolically and in his own mind literally, he becomes the new shaman.
It is a striking, visceral intersection of primitive belief systems colliding with the ruined artifacts of a highly advanced, fallen civilization.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second because earlier we framed this as a story about the stubborn resilience of innate compassion.
Oh, we did, yeah.
But, we're talking about a kid who stumbles upon a corpse and decides to eat its brain to absorb its power.
It sounds a bit like a zombie movie, right?
Yeah. How does an act of primal cannibalism fit into a fable about compassion? Is this actually a transfer of power or just a desperate kid acting out some gruesome pantomime?
That is exactly the right question to ask, and it requires us to separate our modern ethical framework from the survival mechanics of a hypoprimitive society.
Okay, I'm listening.
To understand the how and why of this action, we have to view it through the anthropological lens of the acquisition of power.
The acquisition of power.
Right. The dark child doesn't consume the brain out of malice or spite or, a desire for gruesome revenge against the man who condemned him.
So he's not doing a victory lap over his enemy's body.
Precisely. In the rigid belief system of his people, this specific ritual is the established mechanism for transferring authority. It's about continuity.
Right, it's how they process leadership.
Power, in this tribal setting, isn't something you are elected to twist. It is a physical weight, a tangible essence. By consuming the brain and taking the vertebra, he is performing what is basically an administrative act.
An administrative act. That's a wild way to put it, but it makes sense.
He is acquiring the first of three vital pillars of leadership in this story, which is social authority. He goes from being the lowest outcast to possessing the symbolic mandate of the shaman.
Okay, so it's less about violence and more about assuming a mantle of responsibility.
Exactly.
He is operating within the only legal framework he understands. And immediately after he acquires the social power, the environment provides him with a second pillar.
Out in the ruins.
Right. Among the ruins, he stumbles upon artifacts of the Lost Age. Most notably, a completely intact, functioning, pre-apocalyptic laser rifle.
This is a massive paradigm shift. He has just acquired technological supremacy.
Or laser rifle.
Yes. We really have to pause and consider the cognitive dissonance of this moment. A child who understands the world purely through the lens of animal skins and bone tools and fire is suddenly holding a mechanism that focuses light into a destructive beam.
I mean, how does he even know how to use it? Does it just have a simple trigger?
Well, the notes suggest it involves a process of accidental discovery and rapid intuitive learning, which is actually a hallmark of his latent potential, as we'll see later.
Oh, right, his hidden intellect.
But the key here is that he doesn't need to understand the quantum physics of the weapon to understand its utility. To him, it is magic.
But practical magic.
Exactly. Unlike the unpredictable magic of the gods, this is a magic that responds to the pull of his finger. It gives him an absolute monopoly on violence.
And the restraint he shows with this monopoly on violence is really fascinating. Because shortly after finding the rifle, he is attacked by a massive, mutated wild bear in the ruins.
A truly terrifying creature.
Oh, yeah. And he has a laser rifle. He could have easily turned the bear into ash. It would have been the safest, most logical survival choice.
But he doesn't do that.
He doesn't. He uses the beam to intimidate the creature, to corner it and establish dominance without killing it. He literally tames it.
And this act secures the third and final pillar of his new status, a loyal ally.
Social authority, technological supremacy, and a loyal ally.
Right. Look at the mechanics of his transformation here. He didn't just acquire tools, he acquired a complete portfolio of influence. Social authority from the shaman, technological supremacy from the ruins, and a physical, loyal deterrent in the bear.
It's just an incredible evolution. He has transitioned from a powerless, terrified victim to a highly capable, autonomous entity. He is no longer prey.
No, he's definitely not. But while he is out in the ruins achieving this self-actualization, the dynamic back at his tribal camp is rapidly deteriorating.
Things are getting worse at home.
Much worse. The environment of the dried-up ocean floor introduces a brand new, terrifying apex predator. The source material refers to them as tentacled monsters.
But let's be specific about what they actually are, because the speculative biology here is brilliant. We are talking about giant, highly intelligent octopuses.
Yes, cephalopods that somehow survived the evaporation of the oceans.
Which is wild. Octopuses are already incredibly intelligent problem solvers. I mean, they can squeeze through impossible spaces, they use tools, they can camouflage themselves.
They're basically aliens already.
Right. Now imagine taking that genetic baseline, removing their water environment, and exposing them over generations to leaking, ancient nuclear waste.
It's a recipe for a nightmare. The mutation process described in the notes is a form of rapid, localized evolution driven by extreme environmental pressure.
So they adapt to the dry land.
Exactly. These creatures have adapted to essentially swim across the dry, dusty seabed. But the nuclear radiation hasn't just mutated their physical size, it has altered their neurochemistry.
They're actively hunting the humans.
Yes, they are.
And the humans, who are starving and desperate, discover this deeply twisted mechanic regarding these monsters.
A very grim discovery.
If the tribe manages to kill one of these giant radioactive octopuses and they eat its flesh, they experience a massive, immediate surge in physical strength and intelligence.
It alters their metabolic rate
Yeah.
and temporarily overrides their physiological limits.
It's like the ultimate apocalypse performance enhancer. But there is a fatal catch. The flesh is highly radioactive.
Right, you can't just eat nuclear waste.
By eating it, they absorb a lethal dose of radiation. It's a slow death sentence.
And the metaphor Stefan Wohl is employing here is incredibly sharp. It operates as a profound critique of humanity's historical relationship with hazardous technology. Eating the mutated octopus is a literal Faustian bargain.
Okay, I want to break that down for our listeners. How is eating a radioactive squid a Faustian bargain?
Well, think about the core of the Faust legend, trading your soul or your long-term existence for immediate intoxicating power.
Right, making a deal with the devil.
Exactly. The tribe is starving. They're being hunted. Their short-term survival is constantly in jeopardy. When they eat the irradiated flesh, they gain the immediate, temporary mastery required to survive the day.
They can fight back.
Right. They feel strong. They feel smart. But the byproduct of that power is an invisible poison that corrupts their cells.
It's exactly like how humanity interacted with early industrial technologies.
Yes, perfectly analogous.
Think about radium in the early 20th century. People thought it was a miracle cure. They put it in toothpaste and drinking water because it gave them a perceived surge of vitality.
All while it was systematically destroying their bones from the inside out.
Exactly. Or, on a macro scale, our reliance on fossil fuels. We extracted a resource that granted us unprecedented technological and societal growth, a massive surge in collective strength. But the invisible byproduct has slowly poisoned the atmospheric foundation of our existence.
That's a great point. The tribe eating the octopus is basically a microcosm of human civilization's willingness to mortgage tomorrow for power today.
It's such a visceral way to illustrate that concept. So the tribe is trapped in this lethal cycle. And right as a particularly massive mutant octopus attacks the camp, the Dark Child returns.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. He arrives with his laser rifle, his bear, and his shamanic authority. He steps up, and he uses the rifle to destroy the creature, saving the very people who just days prior were eager to watch him die.
It is the ultimate test of his innate compassion.
He could have just walked away.
He had every reason to let the monster consume them, but he chooses to protect them. However, the tragedy of this narrative is that heroism has a physiological cost.
He doesn't get off scot-free.
No, he doesn't. During the battle, he gets too close to the creature's radioactive blood. He absorbs a completely lethal dose of radiation himself.
So he finally achieves what he wanted. He secures his place among them. He proves his worth and becomes their undisputed leader.
It comes with a ticking biological clock.
Right. He saves them, but the radiation is slowly killing them all. The tribe is dying from eating the monsters, and the Dark Child is dying from fighting one.
Their localized environment has become entirely unsurvivable. Their only hope lies at the very end of the shaman's original forbidden path.
They have to leave.
They have to leave the seabed. They have to find the city of the gods, the mythical destination known as New York.
Which triggers this brutal, agonizing migration. The Dark Child leaves his irradiated, dying tribe on a grueling march toward this city. And the name New York, if you sound it out, is obviously a corrupted, devolved pronunciation of New York.
Yeah, New York. It is a phonetic ghost of the old world. It really highlights how much time has passed and how deeply human culture has eroded.
And the journey itself is horrific. The radiation sickness is just too advanced. And this is where the story completely rips the rug out from under the reader.
It's a very bold narrative choice.
Tragically, every single member of the tribe dies along the way. The very people the Dark Child risked his life to save, the community he sacrificed his own health to finally belong to, they all perish.
It is a devastating structural choice by the author. It completely undermines the traditional hero's journey expectation.
Right, because usually the hero saves everyone.
Exactly. The hero leveled up, got the magical weapon, returned to save his people, and yet he still loses them. It emphasizes that individual power, no matter how great, cannot instantly reverse systemic environmental collapse.
So the Dark Child arrives at the legendary city of New York entirely alone. He is sick, he's exhausted, and he's carrying the grief of his entire species.
But what he finds when he breaches the city limits is just staggering.
New York isn't a pile of rusted steel and collapsed concrete. It is a fully functional, automated metropolis that somehow survived the apocalypse completely intact.
The contrast is intentionally jarring. You have to visualize this. A primitive child, clad in rough animal skins, wearing a necklace of human vertebrae, coughing from radiation sickness, stepping onto pristine, self-cleaning pavement.
It's like two different universes colliding.
It is. The machines are still running, the lights are on, automated systems are humming. It is a utopia operating perfectly in a vacuum.
The culture shock is almost unimaginable. I mean, if you took a modern person and dropped them into the year 3000, they would struggle. But they have a baseline understanding of technological progression.
Right. We understand the concept of the future.
But the Dark Child doesn't. To him, an automated sliding door isn't a motion sensor. It's a spirit recognizing his presence. The city is a ghost town maintained by artificial intelligence, serving invisible masters.
This environment marks a dramatic genre shift in the narrative. We transition abruptly from a gritty, primitive survival story, characterized by bear taming and tribal politics, into high-concept, cerebral science fiction.
The setting changes, and therefore the rules of reality change.
Exactly.
And then the biggest shock is waiting for him inside this automated labyrinth, because he discovers he is not actually alone in the city.
You find someone.
He meets two other living, breathing humans, but they are entirely alien to him. They are from a highly advanced spacefaring branch of humanity who have been shipwrecked on Earth. They actually originate from a human colony on Venus.
This introduces a brilliant layer of mythological irony.
Tell me about it.
Well, remember, to the primitive tribes surviving on the dried ocean floor, New York was a holy site. It was spoken of in hushed, fearful tones as the city of the gods. And when the Dark Child arrives, he finds beings who live in the sky, command the automated city, and possess technology that defies his comprehension.
To his framework, they absolutely are gods. They fit the exact description.
But the reality is these gods are just advanced, stranded scientists. Their ship is wrecked. They are trapped on a hostile planet and desperately need rescue themselves.
It's the classic sci-fi trope.
It is a perfect literary execution of Arthur C. Clarke's famous third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The Dark Child is looking at engineers, but his cultural lens forces him to see deities.
But to be fair to the kid, the technology they possess borders on the miraculous. They see that the Dark Child is dying of acute radiation poisoning, and they intervene.
They step in to help.
Right. They use their advanced Venusian medical technology to heal him. They purge the radioactive isotopes from his cellular structure. But here's where the mechanics of the story take a massive exponential leap.
The healing process is not just restorative, it is catalytic.
Exactly. The Venusian technology works a little too well. Curing the radiation didn't just return the Dark Child to his baseline, primitive human health. The medical intervention fundamentally interacts with his latent, mutated DNA.
It unlocks something dormant.
Yes. It triggers an evolutionary cascade. Suddenly, his intellect is exponentially accelerated.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that acceleration, because it is the core sci-fi conceit of the third act. We are talking about a leap in cognitive ability that is almost instantaneous and seemingly boundless.
Right. Imagine your brain as a vintage 1980s computer. It runs a few basic programs, mostly focused on survival, finding food, avoiding predators.
Very simple operating system.
Now, imagine someone plugs a quantum hard drive into that vintage computer. Instead of crashing, the computer instantly upgrades its own hardware to process the data.
It rewrites itself.
That is what happens to the Dark Child. The notes detail how he rapidly teaches himself to read. He interfaces with the city's vast automated databanks. In a matter of days, he completely absorbs the entirety of human history, philosophy, mathematics, and quantum physics.
He goes from a mind that conceptualizes the world through myth and superstition to a mind that processes the universe through the fundamental laws of physics. The data intake is staggering.
But the acceleration doesn't stop at mere knowledge accumulation. Because he now understands the fundamental laws of physics at a quantum level, he realizes he can manipulate them.
His knowledge becomes active.
Yes, his infinite intellect manifests physically.
This is the apotheosis, the moment he becomes a god.
He develops telekinesis. He gains the ability to fly because he understands gravity not as a magical force pulling him down, but as a curvature of space-time. He simply thinks about unbending that curve, and he lifts off the ground.
Mind over matter, literally.
Exactly. He develops the power to bend space and manipulate matter at a molecular level just by exerting his will.
He becomes the very thing his tribe mistakenly believed the Venusians to be. It is the ultimate inversion of power dynamics.
He goes from the bottom to the absolute top.
The outcast, the lowest member of the lowest tribe on the lowest point of the planet, is now the most powerful entity in the solar system.
And what he does with that ultimate power is absolutely fascinating. I want you to put yourself in his shoes for a second. If you were granted the power to rewrite reality, what would you do?
Most people would probably seek revenge.
Right. Most stories would have him go on a rampage. He could declare himself emperor of the ruins. He could seek out other surviving tribes and conquer them. But he doesn't do any of that.
He takes a completely different path.
First, he addresses the gods. Using his new mastery over matter, he effortlessly constructs a highly advanced spacecraft. He gives it to his 3 Venusian companions, who, by the way, are now absolutely terrified of him, and he sends them safely back to their home planet.
The role reversal is complete here. The primitive child they pitied and cured has become their omnipotent savior. He casually solves the engineering problem that stranded them.
But then he is entirely alone on Earth, a solitary god on a ruined planet. And this leads to a sequence of events that is just staggering in its scale.
It really bends the mind.
He reaches across space and time, utilizing his reality-bending power, and he recreates the Venusians. He makes perfect copies of his 3 friends so they can stay with him on Earth, even as the originals travel home.
It is an act of creation that defies the laws of conservation.
And then he turns his attention back to the dusty, irradiated wasteland outside the city of New York. And he resurrects every single dead member of his tribe.
He brings them all back.
Every last one. The people who perished on the march, the people who persecuted him. He undoes the tragedy.
And he doesn't stop there. He recognizes that the physical environment of Earth, with its dried oceans and dying sun, is still inherently hostile.
So, utilizing a level of cosmic power that is almost incomprehensible, he physically moves the entire planet.
He moves the Earth.
Yes. He manipulates the gravitational fields of the solar system, transports the Earth away from its current orbit, and places it safely at the center of the galaxy in a new, stable environment.
It is the ultimate expression of environmental control. He couldn't adapt to the hostile world as a human, so as a god, he forces the world to adapt to him.
And the finale of the story is incredibly complex and deeply emotional. He has fixed the planet, he has resurrected his people, but he possesses an intellect that understands the sociological implications of his own existence.
He sees the big picture now.
He knows that if he, an omnipotent being, lives among them, he will fundamentally alter their natural evolution. They will worship him, rely on him, and cease to grow.
He would stifle their humanity.
Exactly. So he creates a perfect clone, a copy of his original mortal self, the Dark Child, as he was before the genetic transformation.
The boy with the bone necklace.
Right. He sends that mortal clone to accompany the human originals on their spaceship journey to Venus. Meanwhile, his omnipotent, godlike self stays behind on Earth, hiding, watching over the resurrected tribe from a distance without ever interfering.
It is a breathtaking conclusion that operates on multiple thematic levels simultaneously. It resolves the plot, but it leaves behind a massive philosophical knot.
It really does. And I want to really dig into this because this is the crux of the whole deep dive. I have a driving psychological question here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you have the ultimate cosmic power to move planets, to rewrite DNA, to bend reality to your every whim, why on earth would you choose to recreate the exact same primitive tribe that bullied you, rejected you, and literally sentenced you to death in the first place? Why use infinite power to bring back your abusers?
That is the central paradox of the novel. And unpacking it reveals the profound, overarching theme of Wool's story, which is the loneliness of power.
The loneliness of power.
Think back to the very beginning of the Dark Child's journey.
Yeah.
What was his ultimate foundational motivation? When he was walking across the dried ocean, when he acquired the laser rifle, when he tamed the bear, what was really driving him?
I mean, it was never about revenge. He just wanted to go home. He wanted to belong.
Precisely. Beneath the genetic mutations, beneath the cosmic scale of his new intellect, his ambition remained incredibly stubbornly human. As the source notes highlight, his core desire was simply to be integrated into a group of hunters.
To just have a normal life.
He wanted to have normal social relations. He wanted to sit by a fire, share a meal, and be recognized as an equal by his peers.
He didn't want to be worshipped as a god. He just wanted to be a guy in the tribe.
Yes. And when you analyze his final acts resurrecting the tribe, creating copies of his friends, you realize these are not the actions of an inflated ego showing off its power to the universe.
They're not vanity projects.
No, not at all. They're acts of desperate, profound compassion aimed at alleviating an unimaginable cosmic isolation.
He realizes that being the smartest, most powerful being in the universe is utterly meaningless if you are the only being in the universe.
He has become a being of pure intellect and power, and in doing so, he has evolved entirely out of the human context. He can no longer relate to them, and they can no longer relate to him.
There's a total disconnect.
By bringing the tribe back, and by placing Earth in a safe zone, he is essentially creating a terrarium of humanity. He builds a living memory of what he used to be, just so he doesn't have to be entirely alone in the void.
It's incredibly melancholic when you think about it that way. He saves everyone. He literally saves the world. But the cost of that salvation is that he can never truly be one of them again.
It's a huge sacrifice.
He has to clone his past self, splinter his own identity, just to give a tiny piece of his soul the chance to have a normal, flawed, mortal life with the Venusians.
It is deeply tragic, but it's also remarkably beautiful. If we look at the novel's place in the broader canon of literature, this specific ending is what defines it as an optimistic, post-apocalyptic story.
Optimistic. I mean, most post-apocalyptic stories are entirely bleak. They usually end with humanity grinding itself into the dust, proving we are inherently destructive.
True. The standard trope is that humanity's flaws are fatal. But unlike tales that end in total despair, this fable traces a complete refounding.
A second chance.
Exactly. Out of the ashes of absolute ruin, out of the dried oceans, the primitive brutality, the radioactive mistakes of the past, a new, unimaginably powerful form of human existence is born in the Dark Child. He represents the ultimate realized potential of humanity.
But with a catch.
Right. Crucially, it is a potential that remembers its humble, flawed beginnings.
He doesn't erase the past. He preserves it. He protects the fragile, messy reality of being human.
Exactly. The story argues that true evolution isn't about discarding our humanity, it's about gaining the power to protect it.
That's beautiful. And I want to connect this massive, epic, cosmic concept directly to you, the listener, and your everyday life, because I think there is a deeply practical lesson hidden in this surreal sci-fi narrative.
Oh, absolutely. It's very applicable.
We live in a world that is absolutely obsessed with leveling up. And I don't mean that in a trivial way. We are constantly immersed in hustle culture. We are pressured to acquire more wealth, more influence, the next promotion, the latest technology.
It's driving for the next thing.
Right. We are all trying to evolve past our current state, driven by this underlying belief that if we just get enough power or security, we will finally be happy.
We operate under the assumption that isolation is just a temporary symptom of the climb, and that the top of the mountain will justify the journey.
But the Dark Child's journey, a journey from the absolute lowest strata of society to the literal master of the universe, suggests a deeply grounding truth.
It flips the script on ambition.
It really does.
Huh.
It suggests that if you strip all of that away, if you achieve everything there is to achieve and acquire ultimate control over your environment, the baseline human need remains unchanged. The thing we actually crave more than power, more than supremacy, is simply the desire for community, the desire for connection.
It is a stark reminder that ascending to the pinnacle of power is utterly hollow if there is no one there to share the view with you.
Exactly.
The Dark Child gained the entire universe. He could hold stars in his hands. But he had to use all of that infinite power just to recreate a tiny, flawed, cruel little village, simply to feel a residual sense of home.
It really forces you to reevaluate what you are sacrificing in your own pursuit of success.
It does. It asks us to consider the social and psychological cost of our own personal evolutions.
So let's take a moment to briefly recap the breathtaking arc of this deep dive we've been on together.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. We and you, the listener, have journeyed from a dusty, terrifying, high-pressure environment on a dried-up ocean floor alongside a deeply persecuted, terrified child. We've examined the grim mechanics of survival and the heavy burden of acquiring power.
We talked about mutant octopuses.
Yes, we encountered radioactive octopuses and debated the historical echoes of Faustian technological bargains. We've walked through the silent, humming, automated ghost city of New York, and we've met shipwrecked humans from Venus, blurring the line between engineers and gods.
A lot of ground covered.
And finally, we have witnessed the birth of a lonely, deeply compassionate entity who rearranges the cosmos and moves an entire planet, all just to build a sanctuary for the very people who broke his heart. It is a massive, beautiful, overwhelming story.
It truly is a testament to the unique power of speculative science fiction. It uses the impossible to explore the most fundamental, intimate parts of the human psyche.
It absolutely does. It takes us to the end of the universe just to show us a reflection of our own living rooms. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering, provocative thought to ponder, a question to mull over long after you finish listening today.
Leave him with something heavy.
Exactly. Think about the Dark Child's ultimate fate, watching his resurrected tribe from afar, completely separated from them by his own perfection. If acquiring absolute power and infinite intellect doesn't inherently corrupt us, but instead fundamentally isolates us from the rest of our species, at what point does evolving past our human flaws mean we lose the very imperfections that make life worth living in the first place?
A profound and unsettling question to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly expansive deep dive. We loved unpacking this stack of sources and exploring these concepts with you, and we warmly invite you to return and join us for our next exploration. Until then, keep wondering, question your own evolution, and keep looking out for each other.